Hi, I'm Nick Palmisano, and this is the Bad News Network. In Hurricane Florence news, we may die this week, and it is completely and totally President Trump's fault. Why, you ask? Because op-eds in the Washington Post and the New York Times both said so, that's why. And an editor signed off on those articles. This makes sense because apparently President Trump now has the ability to take warm air near the ocean at the equator and have it rise rapidly, creating a vacuum that is quickly replaced with cold air that is then warmed and rises, creating a cyclone effect. Trump then adjusted oceanic and wind conditions to aim that cyclone right at North Carolina. But in other bad hurricane news, President Trump recently called our performance with the Puerto Rican hurricane a huge success. In a small way, I understand where the president is coming from. Contrary to all the negative news outlets, we've actually spent 5 times what we spent on Hurricane Katrina on Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is actually the largest FEMA spend with the most assets involved in that agent's history, which literally nobody reports on because then it won't seem like Trump doesn't give a shit. But there have been significant failures. Millions and millions of dollars of food and equipment are either sitting on airstrips or in silos for over a year. 54% of all people that have been paid either through contract or through the agency are rated as unqualified for the jobs they currently are holding. And more than anything, Puerto Rico still needs significant logistical support. But most importantly, you can't call something a tremendous fucking success when 3,000 people have died, no matter how much effort you've put into it. That would be like saying 9/11 was a tremendous success because at least they didn't get the Empire State Building. And speaking of 9/11, this week marked the 17th anniversary of 9/11. Many people far more eloquent than I am have said all that you can say about the brave men and women that died that day, the brave men and women that rushed into those towers, and even more people have talked about how amazing America was on 9/12 when we all came together. But maybe the one thing that people aren't talking enough about are the stupid motherfuckers that think this was an inside job. Do you notice that there's almost no government employees that think this was an inside job? There's a reason for that. It's because the government is completely inept. You remember how I mentioned to you guys once that I was on T status for 6 months and I wasn't getting paid while I was in the Army? Like 20 people tried to fix that problem and nobody could. This was a simple matter of getting somebody that was already in the military and had been for several years to get a paycheck. Then think about the VA. A lot of people in the VA system really care about veterans and want to help, but the brutal bureaucracy makes it almost impossible in some cases. And then there's the other part where I don't care what unit you're in, I don't care if it is a supply unit, an infantry unit, or a SOF unit, there is always that guy that everything up. Specialist Carl Bag of Donuts. And that guy would be on this mission, and you're telling me he didn't it up? And you're going to tell me that you convinced elite military operators or CIA or some other 3-letter agency to come and murder 3,000 American civilians, and everyone was just cool with that. So to recap, an organization that can't even execute basic HR functions or run a hospital is going to convince an elite team of operators / explosive experts to execute a mission that is immoral and against the Constitution of the United States, and Specialist Bag of Donuts is not gonna that shit up. But that's not even the best part. I mean, there are already like 13 tell-all books from this administration, and it's not even 2 years old yet. There were 3 books like 2 months after bin Laden was killed, talking about exactly how that happened, and that was all top secret classified information by people that are clearly patriots. There is literally nothing that has happened in the last 2 decades where there wasn't immediately a tell-all book about it, and here we are talking about what would be the biggest story in American history, and nothing? If you believe this stuff, you have to either be incredibly ignorant or a moron, but probably both. And on that note, we've been at war for 17 years with no predetermined definition of success and no clear achievable goals. We've allowed this to happen because the legislative branch has neglected to do its job and we haven't held them accountable. And we haven't held them accountable mostly because they've ensured that this war is happening in such a way that the body politic is paying absolutely no price for it. No draft, no war bonds, no rationing, no restriction on anything. We just get to continue to live our lives the way we always have with no sacrifice. So it has become nothing more than a talking point on social media. Of everything in this report that we should be ashamed of, it is this very thing. because we are wholly complicit in the laziness that has allowed our troops to die and kill without really any interaction on our part. And now we go to field correspondent Matt Finney with a special report.
Thanks, Nick. Field correspondent Matt Finney here, standing outside of Camp Lejeune, where earlier today Brigadier General Al Ford made a statement throughout the internet saying that the Marines would be ready to go to war against Hurricane Florence. This caused a lot of uproar on the internets, and a lot of people were super pissed, probably because they've never met Marines. Marines will literally go to war with anything and anyone. Their dinners, backpacks, traffic, high cholesterol, you name it. I understand that many of the people upset at this are family members of the Marines being left behind, and they're saying that the Marines are being put in an unnecessarily dangerous situation. It's completely true. The government does not in fact care about the Marines. They're fine with leaving them there. Back to you, Nick.
Thanks, Matt. That was great. In culture news, an Air Force colonel was arrested at a Boy George concert this week. When the police approached him, he asked, "Do you really want to arrest me? Because that will really want to make me cry." In rich people sport news, Serena Williams made it to the finals of the US Open after coming off maternity leave. Then Naomi Osaka of Japan started kicking her ass. When that occurred, Serena started being a real dick to an umpire that has a long history of being a stickler for the rules. Such a stickler, in fact, that he once penalized Rafael Nadal for waiting 2 seconds longer than is allowed before serving. He also penalized Nick Kyrgios once for yelling at a towel boy for not being fast enough. Look, Serena Williams is the shit. I got to meet her once at this weird tech event, and she was cool. She gave a great speech, and she is clearly the best female athlete in tennis of all time, and many people argue one of the best athletes ever. But this wasn't racism or misogyny. This was a self-inflicted wound born out of frustration, and then the result frustrated all of her many fans, and so we have this big catastrophic mess. Hillary Clinton, for example, a huge Serena Williams fan, pointed out that while she may not have won the tournament, she did win the popular vote. And finally, in bad fact-checking news, Maria Butina, the alleged Russian agent and provocatrix who exchanged sexual favors for access to GOP bigwigs and the NRA, actually didn't do any of those things. Apparently, the whole sexual favors thing came from a series of text messages she sent to some dude friend of hers, and the prosecution and the press extrapolated the fact that she sent those text messages to the fact that she had pictures with these other important people, and clearly those two things were linked in some way. Hell of a leap. Such a large leap, in fact, that it may have the prosecution dropping all charges. With the impending hurricane coming down on North Carolina, if this is my last news report, I want you guys to make up stories about me. I don't care if they're true. Stolen valor me if you need to. Maybe I save some nuns. Maybe give me some superpowers. What I'd like, though, is for you guys to push on this and make it a blockbuster film. That'll make my spirit proud. And with that, I'm Nick Palmisano, and this is the Bad News Network. Our news is at least as bad as the news you're getting already, and we're probably going to die in a hurricane.